So a really important concept in photography and in video is three-point lighting. And a lot of the language that I've actually already been talking today to Andrew is in terms of key light, fill light, and we haven't gotten into it yet, but backlight. So your key light is the light that's creating the main illumination on your subject. So that's what creates your lighting pattern. That's the light that creates the shadow. Your fill light is the one that fills in the shadows. So that's why it's called the filled light. The ratio between those two determines the kind of look. So you could have a ratio that's, your fill light is actually almost the same intensity as your key light, so that there's almost no difference between the shadow and the highlight in the face. Or you could have a ratio that is pretty broad, so the shadows are much darker than the light side of the face. One thing about fill light is that, and I do know that some people make it work with smaller lights, but for me, I try to always keep the fill light larger than the key light. The reason for this is if you have two lights that are approximately the same size and they're a little bit hard, you're going to get no shadows going in different directions, which looks really weird. Now, if you're going for some sort of effect where you have a blue light here and a red light here and you want to see the purple in the middle and no shadows going both directions, awesome, more power to you. But if you have multiple no shadows, whether they're going the same direction or they're going different directions, that's a huge tip-off of something not being right. It just looks weird. So that's the way that, for me, I try to make sure that the fill light isn't hard enough that it can create a second shadow. In this setup we're doing, it's actually a very common beauty setup. Thank you, sir. You'll see it a lot in Neutrogena ads or makeup ads. And it's called a clamshell setup. And the reason for that is we have one light coming from above and one from below, like a clam. And then we're going to use the V-flat to create a darker background, and we're going to put a hair light on her for the backlight. The purpose of the backlight is to separate the person from the background. So Erica today has blonde hair, so with a black background it would still separate. But let's say you had a model with really dark or black hair and you have a black background. Well, it's going to look like her head just kind of blends into the background. So a hair light is one way that you can create separation. And you can actually create kind of like an angelic effect too. These days, hair lights are not as much in vogue as they once were. They sometimes can give a little bit of an 80s feel. If you think back to those Dynasty headshots, there's gigantic hair and then this halo around them. But it still can be really nice if used judiciously. So this is the way I'm going to demonstrate three-point lighting to you, is through a clamshell setup. This kind of lighting was it originated kind of in the golden age of cinema, and cinematographers, started lighting this way, where it was very much 45 degrees from the nose, and then the fill was 45 degrees in the other section, in the other direction, and then there was the hair light to make the starlet look, gorgeous. So Andrew, how are we doing? Excellent. And while you're doing that, I might skip ahead a little bit and talk about motivated lighting. So motivated lighting, I mentioned at the very beginning that I have my own kind of personal definition of what makes lighting good or bad. And when we talk about where a light is coming from, we talk about its motivation. So it's pretty obvious here that that light is motivated by the sun, because it is. When we really want to start to talk about motivation is when we're actually trying to recreate another type of light. So the motivation tells us in a scene, what is this light that's falling on the subject supposed to be coming from? What is motivating this light? And this is a photo that I found recently online that I thought was really great at explaining motivated lighting. Now, I seriously doubt that this image was lit by this lamp. I don't think so. I would imagine that there's probably, I would not imagine that this is all that lamplight on her. It might be, but there's a lot of light coming down here, and actually, you know, there's this shadow here. So I'm going to assume that there's some flash going on here. So the light that's falling on this side of her face, I would say, is motivated by this light. We're trying to create a light that looks like it's coming from this light, even though it might not be that light. At the same time, we also have this other slash of light here, which for me is motivated by like the bathroom in this motel room. This could just be a flash pointed straight at the ground, but I'm going to say this is motivated by a bathroom light. So motivated lighting helps us tell the story of where we're supposed to be. And if a light seems to be motivated correctly, it looks natural. For instance, if I were to take Erica and put her up against that window and then shoot a beauty dish at her from this direction. So the sun is coming this way, but there's this bright light coming this way. It would look like I was shooting her on a green screen because our eyes are telling us the sunlight, which should be the main light, is coming in this way. But then we have this other light going in the exact opposite direction. That light isn't motivated correctly. The only thing it could be motivated by would be a big spotlight in the room, which is not very realistic. So that's what I'm talking about when I say motivated lighting. What real object, or, you know, if it's the sun, if it's a lamp in a motel room, even to a degree, this type of lighting has a little bit of motivation. We see these and they're a little bit theatrical. We know they're kind of fake, but at the same time, it could be like a bathroom mirror. You know, you go into some bathrooms and they have those bars all around, so it creates this very soft and shadowless look that, you know, takes away the pores of the model. A beauty dish just by itself might be motivated as if it were a spotlight on stage. It might be a little theatrical. But I like to always try to think about, you know, what's creating, what's motivating the light. The direct overhead light, when that's working really well, I like to think about that as being motivated by a skylight, like there's an opening in the studio and the skylight is coming in. And of course, when you're trying to make something look like sunlight, you're trying to motivate something that would look like sun. And so for this setup, if you guys actually want to start queuing up over there, and Erica will have you in position, we're going to run through this one pretty quickly. We're going to try to wrap this setup in about 10 minutes, and then we'll wrap up our day. So one thing, I hope that this isn't going to completely overpower. You're going to come in actually pretty close here. So right there looks good. Okay. Let's see. We don't have, or actually, you know what, we could use, if this is too much, we can use those diffusion panels to cut it. So yes, way too much coming from underneath. So remember before when I was talking about light coming from underneath makes it look a little ghoulish? That's kind of what happened here, because this light down here is just too intense. So yeah, bring that all the way up. I'm going to stop down. Okay. And stop down more. And also, Andrew, could we have the black side of the V-flat in there, please? So we can see the hair light. Is that firing? One other thing that's happening with the triggering of the flash, you'll notice that these flashes aren't connected. They actually have what's called a slave. It's a thing that watches for a rapid change in light, so you don't have to have each of these lights connected to a pocket wizard. When one fires, the rest will fire automatically. If you don't want that to happen, there's a slave switch on the lights that you can turn it off. Excellent, there we go. Okay, so what you'll notice on this is that there is a little bit of a hard chin shadow, but it's very, the ratio is actually very close, so there's not like a very dark shadow underneath. You still have a little bit of modeling of the cheekbones, which is nice. But in general, you can even overexpose this just a little bit, and the pores of the skin kind of disappear because there's no shadows on them that like will bring them out. So that's why this is a great setup for beauty specifically. And like I said, those Neutrogena ads or moisturizing ads to show like really beautiful skin. So jump on in. And also the modeling light, is this modeling light not working, or is it just slight compared to the... So that's another reason why you can't trust modeling lights, because if you look at this right now, obviously we have that uplight from, like the campfire, but when you take the photo, it's going to look very different. So, oh, trigger, yes. Who's up first? Okay, so this part I'll go into while you guys are kind of shooting. It's more kind of philosophical stuff. I'm a big fan of something that social scientists right now call deliberate practice. And this guy, James Clear, says, deliberate practice refers to a special type of practice that is purposeful and systematic. While regular practice might include mindless repetitions, deliberate practice requires focused attention and is conducted with the specific goal of improving performance. And really, the more that I've done lighting, the more that I've found that this is really what contributes to getting better. In the beginning, I would be kind of all over the place. I would see this one lighting diagram, I would do that. Oh, didn't work. Well, I'm going to try this other lighting diagram. That one didn't work. Instead of going back to that first one and saying, okay, I need to figure out why this didn't work, and I need to work on that and really hone that and get that going down well. It's like a tennis swing. If you're just hitting the ball back from a ball machine over and over and over again and doing the same thing and it's going the same place, you need to have that ability to say, okay, I'm going to move my arm this way a little bit, or I'm going to adjust my grip. And sometimes even it can help when you have someone outside who can see from the outside what you're doing with your arm and coach you through it. That's what deliberate practice is all about.